The Dark Angels, First Legion founded before the days of the Great Crusade. The Angels of Death, the uncrowned princes, the legion on which all other legions will be based. Within this document is a verbal history and knowledge as best as we can describe for the Dark Angels, a chapter now known for secrecy. Lionel Johnson, Primarch of the Dark Angels. Spirited away from Terra, the Lion was flung across the galaxy, landing on the notoriously chaos-held death world of Caliban, which was a feudal world with knights and serfs, just like the ancient days of old Terra. The Lion landed in a jungle and for 10 years proceeded to eke out an existence. While out on the hunt, he heard voices and went to investigate. While investigating, a group of knights saw this man-beast and all drew arms to eliminate, as they thought it was one of the chaos-tainted beasts. One man convinced them to put their weapons down after realising that this is a human. That man's name was Luther. Luther returned the man-beast to Aldrucca, which was the name of the keep where the Order were based. Now, the Order were different to all the other knightly orders on Caliban. And all the other knightly orders had nobles as knights. The Order took everyone. Anyone was acceptable to be a knight, as long as they had the right courage and honour. So the Lion was initiated into the Order and very quickly rose through the ranks due to being a superhuman being. Eventually, he made Master alongside Luther, and between them, they concocted a plan to rid the world of all the chaos-tainted beasts. Luther's charisma and personality and Johnson's tactical mind ensured that within 10 years, all the great beasts and chaos-tainted monsters of Caliban were eliminated. On completion, the Lion was promoted to Supreme Grand Master of the Order. Luther felt a bit of jealousy in that, but hid it down. Then came the days of the Emperor and the Imperium. The Emperor landed on Caliban after discovering through scouts one of his Primarchs, and was reunited with his lost son. Caliban was made the Legion homeworld, and the Lion was assigned to lead the First Legion. He changed their name from the First straight away to a name from Calibanite myth, the Dark Angels. After ensuring Luther was inducted into the Legion, not as a full Space Marine, but as a just enhanced warrior, he set off for the Great Crusade. The First Legion were active throughout the galaxy during the Great Crusade, but next to none of their campaigns are recorded in Imperial history. The only notable campaign on the records from before the Primarch of the Rangdan Genocide, the Legion's strength was greatly reduced in a series of battles against the Rangdan. In the aftermath of this, the Emperor discovered the Primarch, whose genetic template matched the First Legion. In the reunion of Primarch and Legion, the Legion's name was changed to the Dark Angels, and Caliban became the Legion's homeworld. After inducting most of the young knights into the Legion, the Lion led them into the stars to continue the Great Crusade. On the world Dulan, the Lion and the Wolf met for the first time, and they would get into a brawl over the honour of killing the traitorous governor. The Wolf wanted to kill, but the Lion got there first. After the Ulnor campaign, which saw the Dark Angels fighting on the Eastern Fringe, the Primarch Horus was made War Master. After Horus fell to chaos and started planning his great heresy, he sent the Night Lord's Legion to cause problems in the Shield Worlds to keep the Lion and the Dark Angels out of the way while he conquered Terra. The Dark Angels spent a number of years trying to bring the Night Lords to a definitive battle, but couldn't do it. Eventually, the Night Lords were brought to battle and broke up into small raiding parties. The Dark Angels then headed back towards the Galactic Core in an effort to stop Horus. Sweeping through the southern part of the galaxy, Dark Angels laid waste to multiple worlds who were declared for Horus. During this crusade through the southern part of the galaxy, the homeworlds of two of the traitor legions, the Emperor's Children and the Death Guard, were annihilated by the Lion and the Dark Angels. They then headed towards Terra. In light of the heresy, thousands of worlds were still considered traitors, and the Dark Angels took to the stars to cleanse the Imperium of the traitors. During this time, the Dark Angels diverted to Caliban, where they were fired upon by the orbital batteries. The Lion withdrew and endeavoured to find out what had happened. On learning that the planet had turned traitor, he ordered a mass bombardment of Caliban. Leading his veteran troops to the planet, they fought other Dark Angels while the planet was being destroyed around them. The leader of this rebellion was none other than Luther, the man who had raised the Lion. An intense duel occurred between the two former brothers, and Luther lost. The planet was destroyed and the traitors were sucked into the warp. When the Dark Angel got to the scene of the final battle, the Lion had disappeared and Luther was raving about forgiveness. The remains of the Order's fortress was converted into a mobile space fort to house what was left of the Legion. It was during this time that Rabute Gulliman created the Codex Astartes, which would govern how the Space Marines would operate. The most defining rule was the legions would be broken up into chapters of no more than 1,000 Marines. One chapter would retain the legion's name, and the others would take new names. The Dark Angels did this to avoid scrutiny at a difficult time. One of the levels in the Old Order was the Inner Circle, and this became the basis of how the Dark Angels would operate. They would hunt these fallen Dark Angels and make them all repent. In that way, they would earn the Emperor's forgiveness in their own eyes. Over the years, the Dark Angels would take part in the protection of the Imperium, but would suddenly disappear from war zones without giving a reason. Time went on, the Dark Angels became more secretive and insular. In the later years of the 41st millennium, the Dark Angels were drawn into more conflicts than they had previously. They fought on Cadia during the 13th Black Crusade, where the entire 4th Company was destroyed in the aftermath of the planet's destruction. They also fought in the Fenris system, after being manipulated into making war on the Space Wolves chapter. After the demon-hunting Space Marines of the Grey Knights got involved, they all fought as one, as Magnus the Red, the Primarch of the Thousand Suns, returned to the galaxy and was determined to destroy the Space Wolves as an act of revenge from the days of the heresy. In light of this, the Dark Angels chapter master summoned all the Dark Angels and their successors to a meeting to discuss what to do, now that the Citrix Maledictum, a massive warp storm, had split the galaxy in half. The last ship to arrive bared the newly awakened Primarch of the Ultramarines, who brought much needed reinforcements to the Dark Angels and their successors. These reinforcements came in the form of the Primaris Marines, the next step up for Space Marines. The Dark Angels went forth into the galaxy with the new reinforcements. Not long after this, the Dark Angels' fortress, the Rock, was invaded by a demon army. Dark Angels fought the demons off and were left wondering why this attack occurred. The Dark Angels maintained a secretive and esoteric schema of heraldry and rank, each warrior being a member of an order, an organisation of warriors which transcended legion structure, and a wing, as well as, in some cases, several other internal circles or councils outside of the traditional legion hierarchy. In the days before the coming of the Lion, the ranks of the First Legion were organised into 6 hosts known as the Hexagrammaton, each with its own combat specialities and tactical doctrines, developed by veterans of the Legion over long campaigns. Later, after reuniting with their Primarch, these hosts would be refined and reorganised to become the 6 wings of the Dark Angels. The wings were structures which sat outside of Legion rank, created such that warriors of many disciplines were available to respond to the need for their expertise in any war zone. The Storm Wing incorporated the majority of the Dark Angels' line infantry, training battalions and mobile ordnance batteries within its ranks. The members of this wing were drilled in the discipline and stalwart arts of close order warfare and set-piece battles, unshakable in defence and resolute in attack. Its veteran warriors were the core of the Legion's infantry companies, capable of executing complex manoeuvres and formations under the heaviest enemy fire. When the Legion took the field of battle en masse, the veterans of the Stormwing stood in the front ranks, serving to steel the resolve of their brethren to oversee the execution of orders in the chaos of battle. The Deathwing excelled in special operations alongside other units of the Legion, especially as a counterpart to the more numerous Stormwing, with a multitude of sub-disciplines within its ranks. Most renowned among its specialists were those dedicated to the role of line breakers, elite veteran infantry who served to shatter the enemy's formations and create openings for other units or wings, and the lifeguard cadre deployed to protect officers during battle. These lifeguards were especially prominent, with few high-ranking officers in the Legion lacking a small force of Deathwing veterans sworn to give their lives to ensure their safety. The Ravenwing were based around the principles of mobile attacks, strike and fade tactics and skirmish warfare, and excelled at the use of light skimmers and aircraft, but also incorporated significant infantry assets. These were mostly reconnaissance squadrons, though among those were infantry units specialised in the use of drop pods and other orbital assault doctrines. When the Legion gave battle to a foe that sought to evade or confuse them, or one whose overwhelming power compelled them to counter it with speed, it was the warriors of the Ravenwing that took to the fore. The Dreadwing are perhaps the most feared of all the branches of the Hexagrammaton, garnering a reputation that far outweighed the Wing's influence within the Legion. The Dreadwing was composed of those whose role was the utter annihilation of the enemy, the salting of the earth, and breaking of worlds. When called out from the ranks, the initiates of the Dreadwing were experts in the brutal tactics of massacre, purge, and the deployment of exterminatus class weaponry, though many also specialised in the use of terror as a weapon. The Iron Wing was dedicated to the use of overwhelming firepower on the field of battle, to confound the foes by means of barrage and conflagration, to defy their riposte within, violate armour, and carry the day by means of force alone. It was not a subtle wing, composed as it was of the majority of the Legion's armoured vehicles, heavy dreadnoughts, and field artillery batteries. They excelled at the breaking of fortresses by superior firepower and the rapid onslaught of massed war engines to overrun and annihilate an unprepared foe in the open field. The Fire Wing was the smallest of the 6 wings of the Hexagrammaton, dedicated to all the bloody subtleties of warfare. It was the hidden blade of the Legion, the knife in the dark, and the blade against the throats of the foe's commanders. Within its ranks were to be found an eclectic mix of stalkers, champions, and Moritat killers, all bound by their shared expertise in the arts of blade and knife, duelists and assassins without peer. After the heresy, the Dark Angels followed the decrees of the Ultramarines Primarch Rabute Guilliman and broke the Legion down into a number of chapters. The Dark Angels would be the originals, and they would go on to found many more chapters. The Dark Angels are organised as any other chapter in the galaxy. They have a chapter master, a chief apothecary, chief librarian, master of sanctity, who's their head chaplain. They have a master of the forge, they have a fleet commander, and they are organised along the lines of 10 companies, like every other chapter, in line with the Codex. However, it's the first 2 companies, the first and second companies of the chapter, where things are different. The Chapter Master of the Dark Angels also has the title of Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels. And at the moment, this is Azrael. Now, he's called the Supreme Grand Master because all the Dark Angel successors chapters all answer to him. He is in charge of all their chapter masters and how their legions work. The Master of Sanctity for the Dark Angels is Saphon. Now, the Dark Angels have a unique chaplaincy organisation, whereas most chapters have a chaplain and then a Master of Sanctity. The Dark Angels have another rank in the middle called the Interrogator Chaplains, which ties into their hunt for the Fallen. Ezekiel is the chief librarian of the Dark Angels. It is said his gaze can see straight through the heart of any man. Most initiates to the Deathwing have turned down such promotions based on what Ezekiel has seen inside them. The chief tech marine of a chapter is called the Master of the Forge. And in the Dark Angels, this is a very unique position because he is wired into the workings of the rock for the rest of his life. His augmented parts continue working long after the flesh has decayed. Every Space Marine chapter has an apothecary, and the Dark Angels are no different. The extra layers for the Dark Angels mean the Chief Apothecary is the only one who knows all the recruitment planets and where the gene seed is scattered throughout the galaxy for the safety and preservation of the future chapter. The Dark Angels have 10 companies. The first is their veteran company. This is commonly called the Deathwing. Their second company is the Raven Wing. They have 3 companies of battle, the 3rd, the 4th and the 5th. 4 companies of reserve, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th. And they have a 10th company, which is the Scouts and Initiate Company. It also has a standing force of 100 Vanguard Space Marines, all armed in Phobos armour. The Deathwing, the veteran company of the Dark Angels. Prior to the reinforcements of the Primaris Marines, this was an entirely Terminator-based company. Every Space Marine in it took to the field in Terminator armour. There are many ranks within the Deathwing, because this is part of the Inner Circle. Now, as they progress, they learn more and more of the truth of what happened during the days of Old Caliban. You start as a normal Terminator, but then you've got Deathwing Knights, which are company masters in training. We now have the Blade Guard Veterans, who are superlative duelists. And this leads up, and they have a command structure. They have a chaplain, they have an apothecary, they have a standard bearer, and a company champion, and a company master. For the Deathwing, the company master is Belial, and he is the most superlative duelist in the chapter. The Raven Wing is the Dark Angels' unique second company, ostensibly as a recon company, filled as it is with bikes, attack bikes, land speeders of various forms, and the Dark Angels' unique aircraft. It is a nod to its forebears in fast-moving warfare. However, it has another role. It is used to gather information on the whereabouts of the fallen. Again, they have a level in the Raven Wing of, they have the Black Knights, who have been initiated fully and understand exactly who the Raven Wing are looking for. They also have a chaplain, a standard bearer, a company champion, and an apothecary, like all the other companies. The 3 battle companies of the Dark Angels, the 3rd, the 4th and the 5th, are all organised according to the same lines in accordance with the Codex. So they have a company master at the top, they have 2 lieutenants underneath them, who can each take charge of half the company should the need arise. They have a chaplain, an apothecary, a company standard, a company champion, and a cadre of veterans. They are organised around 6 battle line squads, 2 close support squads, and 2 fire support squads. The reserve companies at the command level are organised exactly the same as the battle companies. It is in their squads that they differ. So the 6th and 7th companies are designated battle line companies. This is where all the reserve battle line squads are held. The 8th company is the most mobile company. This is where all the close support squads are housed. This is usually the 2nd company, and aspirants from the 10th company will find themselves after they've mastered time in the Devastator company. The 9th company is the most heavily armoured. This is the fire support company. This is where all the heavy weapons troopers are based. It's also the first company that initiates from the scout companies will find themselves as they start their journey through the chapter. The 10th company is where all the scouts are housed. These are assigned to strike forces as needed to give the scouts the experience of being on the front lines and gets them to learn how to use the implants they've been given as Space Marines. It is also home of the Vanguard, 100 Space Marines fully equipped in Phobos armour for stealth and infiltration missions. So that's been a look over the Dark Angels Legion organisation, chapter organisation, and a bit of history about them. If you've liked this, like and subscribe. There are many more chapters and legions to do, and I will work my way through them all. However, one last secret remains. For nearly 10,000 years, the Dark Angels have kept secret the disastrous events that took place on Caliban. They have never revealed the truth to anyone outside of the Unforgiven, for they could not bear for others to know their terrible shame. Thus has guilt and secrecy transformed them over the millennia. For all that time was the betrayer Luther kept deep within the rock, his existence known only to the Supreme Grand Master and to the mysterious Watchers in the Dark. For all that time did Luther scream. He spoke in a voice of inhuman quality and told lies or wailed out great secrets. In moments of rare lucidity, Luther begged for his own death. Yet Luther is gone now, escaped by unknown means and to unclear ends. One more truth remains concealed, however. Buried deep inside the last bedrock of old Caliban is the greatest of all the Dark Angel's secrets. Hidden in the innermost chamber that is unreachable by all save the cryptic Watchers in the Dark, Lionel Johnson slumbers. His wounds long healed, he awaits a time when he is most needed, and the clarion call of battle summons him to once more lead his sons to defend the Imperium of mankind.